Chicago Tonight, Black Voices is made possible in part by Fifth Third Bank and by the support of these donors.
At Fifth Third, we believe when diverse voices are heard and empowered, communities are made stronger, lives are made better, and the future holds greater promise for all. That's why we're proud to support Chicago Tonight Black Voices. Together, we can make a difference. Together, we can drive change.
Good evening and welcome to Chicago Tonight, Black Voices. I'm Brandis Friedman and thank you for sharing part of your weekend with us. On the show tonight, what state governments are doing and what some think they should be doing to increase COVID-19 vaccination rates in the Black community. An examination of the law enforcement response to rioters storming the Capitol. And what can Chicago Public Schools parents expect with their kids returning to in-person learning tomorrow? WTTW News reporter Matt Masterson joins us to break it all down.
Look in front of you and who do you see? Beautiful people smiling at me.
And a musical husband and wife duo gives us the last word on why they think each of us has something to give to our communities. First off tonight, the dawning of a new year and the earliest vaccine rollouts have yet to improve the grim numbers of COVID-19 infections. And while COVID-19 rates among Black Americans are among the highest in the country, skepticism about the vaccines is also disproportionately high. A December ProPublica article found that some states, including Illinois, do not have a plan to address vaccination hesitancy among Black Americans, nor do they have solid demographic data about who is getting the vaccine. Joining us now with more are ProPublica reporter Caroline Chen, one of the authors of that ProPublica story, and Dr. Helene Gale, president and CEO of the Chicago Community Trust. Welcome both of you back to Chicago Tonight, Black Voices. Dr. Gale, let's start with you, please. Can you tell us some of what you're hearing from community organizations that you work with about how the Black community is responding to the vaccine?
Thank you very much, and thanks so much for having us on. You know, I think we know that there is a fair amount of skepticism about this vaccine in the Black community, and there's, you know, still a wait and see attitude. One of the things that I think is encouraging, though, is as we get more experience with the vaccine, as it rolls out and as more people are getting the vaccine, some of that hesitancy or lack of confidence in the vaccine is actually decreasing. And so I think it shows that with the right kind of information, we could really make a big difference in how the vaccine is viewed in the Black community as well as other communities.
And I want to come back to that information and how we disseminate it in just a bit as well. But Caroline Chen, you know, there's obviously a lot of history of cases and reasons for mistrust in the Black community. Of the medical community, everyone knows about the Tuskegee experiments. Of course, there were also gynecological experiments that were conducted on Black women who were enslaved. But you point to some modern examples of that. Tell us what you learned.
Yeah, I think one thing that I really would like to point out is just having done a lot of interviews and talked to both patients and doctors, you know, the Black community or the Black and Brown community is not one monolith. There's not one reason for vaccine hesitancy. Sure, there's some people who point to the Tuskegee studies and point to history as reasons for their doubts or worries, but some people point to their distrust of the government now, who say, you know, look at the pharmaceutical industry now, who look at what's happening in research enterprise now. And one of the doctors that I interviewed said, you know, we don't see people who look like us at the research table now. And so we don't think that they have our interests in mind now. And I do think, though, that there is an increased awareness of the lack of representation in research and trials now. And there was actually a really big pressure to make sure that there was representation in these vaccine trials, which I think was actually really, really good. And so there were people of color in the vaccine trials. And so we're able to point to the data in the trials to say that they weren't just white people who were enrolled in the trials, and we know that the vaccine was efficacious. And I think that is a step forward, but it's understandable that there still is hesitancy.
Now, Friday morning, the city organized a vaccination event at a rehabilitation and healthcare facility where registered nurse Tanae Tillery urged other healthcare providers to get vaccinated as well.
The time is now for us heroes to become champions by getting vaccinated. This vaccine has shown to provide a great deal of protection against this virus, and the more of us who get vaccinated, the better we can protect one another and our residents from COVID-19. So to those healthcare heroes that have and will be vaccinated, we thank you. Our residents are depending on us to act in their best interest.
Dr. Gale, do you think, these sort of public vaccinations or having sort of high-profile influencers receive their vaccines publicly, could that increase vaccine uptake in the Black community?
I think it helps. I think there's several, but there's never one answer. I think, this has to be a multi-pronged sort of campaign, if you will. First of all, there needs to be the right kind of information at a national level, and we really need to make sure we're getting the information out about the vaccines, why they're safe, why they're effective, and why they can make a big difference. I think then it also, at the local level, at the community level, there needs to be information that is provided in ways that people relate to information and to informers or messengers who can give the messages in ways that have credibility. And so I think it's important that people see people that look like them taking the vaccine, but I also think it's important that they hear from people that they trust. And I think how this vaccine is rolled out will really help to bridge some of the divide and bridge some of the lack of trust. So if people see others jumping the line before them, and if people don't see that there's a real serious effort around equity and making sure that the communities that have borne the brunt of this pandemic are the ones who also have access and priority for vaccines, I think the mistrust will continue because as Caroline mentioned, it's not just historical, it's current mistrust. And so I think there's a lot that can be done to bridge that divide, to build that trust, and to be able to have communities of color access this vaccine and make a difference in their lives and the lives of their families.
And Caroline, one of the issues that your article highlighted was the data collection of those being vaccinated. Tell us what some of the problems are and also what that means down the road.
Yeah, so the CDC in its playbook for the states has said that it wants the states to report data to the federal agency, which includes information about the race and ethnicity of everyone who has been vaccinated. But it doesn't have any real enforcement mechanism or ways for the states other than just saying, please tell us. And I've talked to a lot of pharmacists who have said, well, this is kind of not a need to have, it's a nice to have in our system. Or some of them would say, well, it really isn't in our electronic medical record systems. So it seems that this is something which the CDC is hoping to collect, but it isn't something that we know we're going to reliably be able to get. So the issue that I'm concerned about here is that we're not going to really be able to know at a national level how successful are we at actually getting the vaccine to these vulnerable populations. I'm not just thinking about communities of color here, but also to rural populations, other minority communities. Having data really helps us know how successful we are. And so it's going to depend a lot state to state. Some states are much more used to gathering in-depth data. Some really don't have that sort of system. And we might have this issue where we have 50 different stories going on.
Sounds like a lot more work to be done there, obviously. ProPublica reporter Caroline Chin and Dr. Helene Gale of the Chicago Community Trust. Thanks again to you both for joining us.
Thank you.
And up next, comparing law enforcement's response to the riots in the Capitol to this summer's Black Lives Matter protests in a conversation recorded earlier. After protesters, rioters, and looters stormed the Capitol last week, many were left wondering why Capitol law enforcement appeared so unprepared. And some are pointing to starkly different law enforcement responses seen at Black Lives Matter demonstrations, saying the insurrection reveals a double standard. Joining us to discuss all that and more are Reuben Jonathan Miller, Associate Professor at the University of Chicago School of Social Service Administration and author of the forthcoming book, Halfway Home: Race, Punishment, and the Afterlife of Mass Incarceration, and Matt Doherty, Senior Vice President of Threat and Violence Risk Management at Hilliard Hines in Chicago. It's a security risk management firm, which is a Jensen Hughes company. He's also a retired U.S. Secret Service special agent who was in charge of the National Threat Assessment Center. Gentlemen, welcome back to Chicago tonight. Matt Doherty, let's start with you, please. Given your role in the Secret Service, what was your reaction to the storming of the Capitol yesterday?
And prior to that, I was a U.S. Capitol policeman as a young kid out of college. Appalling. I have never seen anything like it. Obviously, whatever contingency plans were in place, to include the mayor calling for the National Guard, and got them 2 days prior. It was just appalling that the entire perimeter security completely broke down. There must have been a contingency plan, and whatever contingency plan was in place utterly failed. So that was my first impression.
Today, President-elect Biden spoke about yesterday's events. Here's a clip of that.
No one can tell me that if had been a group of Black Lives Matter protesting yesterday, they wouldn't have been treated very, very differently than the mob of thugs that stormed the Capitol.
Reuben Jonathan Miller, we spoke with you, of course, in June amid the civil unrest after the killing of George Floyd. What differences do you see between the law enforcement response and preparation that we saw over the summer compared to what we saw yesterday?
Well, it's not only what we saw on the news, but what's been empirically verified. Police respond very differently to anti-policing protests than they do to other kinds of protests. And we know that police respond very differently to Black Lives Matter protests than they have to right-wing protests. So for example, there was something like, perhaps, I think the latest number is something around 68 altogether arrests that happened in and around what we're calling an insurrection. Something like 68 total arrests. And we know that there were over 300 at the last Black Lives Matter protests just a few months ago in DC. And this mirrors in stark ways the 5-to-1 racial disparity that we know exists in incarceration rates in the United States. And so the difference is police meet Black protesters with greater force. Police meet Black protesters with a different kind of sense of vitriol. And the coverage of Black protests look very different. We call them riots and looting, and things were stolen out of the Capitol, windows were broken, but we haven't used that kind of language with the same speed in relation to these protesters.
Matt, what is your reaction to the different levels of response, the different levels of forces that were deployed yesterday versus any Black Lives Matter protest?
I think Reuben brings up some great points. You know, the Secret Service has always prided themselves on being apolitical. You know, I put my life on the line for a year in the 80s protecting Reverend Jackson as he ran for president. I think there's some very good points there. My theme is what's supposed to happen. What is supposed to happen was an intelligence analysis of demonstrations. Obviously, Black Lives Matter predominantly has a peaceful mission of reforming police departments. The Trump rally had a lot of vitriol, a lot of escalation, but predominantly those were law-abiding citizens too. What happens is when you don't have a good analysis of what I'll call infiltrators in demonstrations, they totally disrupt the peaceful mission and the constitutional right. And certainly Black Lives Matter, just like a Trump rally, has a right for a peaceful assembly as guaranteed in the Constitution. I think there was just a severe failure, a lack of intelligence gathering to let people know that there were people with violent tendencies in that Trump rally and marching up to the Capitol. Certainly the rhetoric didn't help any, but some valid points by Reuben here.
Former First Lady Michelle Obama released a statement today about her thoughts on yesterday's events, also comparing it to Black Lives Matter protests, which were overwhelmingly peaceful. She said in part, quote, "And yet in city after city, day after day, we saw peaceful protesters met with brute force. We saw cracked skulls, mass arrests, law enforcement pepper spraying its way through a peaceful demonstration for a presidential photo op." Ruben, how was the treatment by law enforcement different yesterday?
I think we saw a kind of leniency from the shots that were captured on behalf of Capitol Police, and as we discussed a second ago, the sheer number of arrests. And so, if we think about empirically what has happened, how many people have been arrested, how many people have charges been brought against, we see stark differences between these groups.
Matt, obviously it was horrible yesterday. It could have been worse, but do terrorists, no matter what, do they look at this and do they see vulnerabilities? What do you think?
No doubt about it. And just from a security perspective, that the White House is not a public house. You have to get tours, but they have to be by appointment. They run your name, and our legislator, it's a public house, so it's a public facility. I think that predominantly for the Capitol, they're going to insist that it stay open. But again, it was just appalling how the outer perimeter, inner perimeter, it's not lost on me that you didn't see the National Guard really deployed until there was a response. And I think definitely I can agree with Ruben on, I would have wanted to see a lot more arrests on the outer perimeter for that unlawful, clearly unlawful activity. And now, by media reports, there's 4 deaths. Clearly, uncalled for, lack of a security plan. And let's face it, police, their responsibility should be the public safety, the primary responsibility, the public safety of peaceful, law-abiding people that are assembling, as is their right in the Constitution. And I do think the Capitol Police on the inner perimeter, they were very heroic. Once the inner perimeter breaks down in Secret Service terminology and the guns come out, the security has failed. But they were heroic in evacuating people, ensuring that congressmen and the staff were not harmed. But certainly the public safety in the last year really needs to be looked at, because people have a right to be protected as they're lawfully assembling in their constitutional rights. None of us, and I'm sure Ruben agrees, are condoning any of the illegal activity by some people out of the many that are peacefully assembling to demonstrate.
And yeah, I'm sure there's certainly a lot of security to consider as we approach inauguration in a couple of weeks. My thanks to Ruben Jonathan Miller and Matt Doherty for joining us.
Thank you.
Back with more Chicago Tonight Black Voices right after this. But first, a pair of shuts and what's on tap tomorrow.
Brandis, we've got a lot planned on Chicago Tonight. We're live in Springfield. Will a new legislative session bring a new Speaker of the House? And an update on the massive overhaul of the red and purple lines on the north side. That's this week at 7 here on 11. And now, Brandis, back to you.
Paris, thank you. For the first time in 10 months, Chicago public school students are set to return to their school buildings tomorrow. This comes after months of wrangling between the district and the Chicago Teachers Union, the majority of which is opposed to returning to in-person learning. Here's the mayor on Friday in advance of tomorrow's reopening.
The fact of the matter is, however, that it is not sustainable, not over the long term, because it does not serve every student equally, especially those students who are younger, who require additional help and supports, or simply don't have access to a sustainable learning environment.
WTTW News reporter Matt Masterson has been following this story, and he joins us now. Matt, tell us what's supposed to happen tomorrow when some students return to their school buildings.
Hey, Brandis. So we know that this first cohort of students that's going back tomorrow, it's pre-K and special education cluster program students. And it's not everyone within those groups. It's only those who've specifically told CPS they do want to go back to in-person learning. So CPS says this is being done with all these safety precautions in place, like requirements on mask wearing, social distancing. And the district said they've even taken additional steps to take to protect students and educators from COVID. But the bigger question is how many teachers and staff is going to show up. Of about 6,000 educators and staffers who were supposed to be there on Monday, only about 60% actually showed up. CPS said that number grew throughout the week, but it only rose to about 65% as of Thursday. So for teachers specifically, that was about 1,200 out of the 2,000 who were supposed to be there on Thursday actually showed up.
Now, as you and I talk about this today on Friday, we know that CTU has been resistant to returning to the buildings. Here's Chicago Teachers Union Vice President Stacey Davis Gates when she joined us on Chicago Tonight on Tuesday, discussing the reasons they're resistant to returning.
You have a supermajority of the city council. You have local school councils all across the city, and you have teachers, paraprofessionals, and clinicians telling you that we need safety, we need transparency, and we need agency. What they have chosen to do is to make a plan without the benefit of all of those stakeholders and tell us to trust them. They have it. And what many members are finding when they come into the school communities is that you can't trust them because all of the mitigation factors that they have said are not there.
Now, Matt, the teachers union disputes CEO Janice Jackson's claims that the buildings are ready. What's CTU saying?
Well, a lot of teachers have said they're scared to go back into a school building with the COVID pandemic still going on. They want some assurances from the school district that certain safety protocols are going to be enforced. They want more staff testing, they want contact tracing, and they want a reliance from the district on a more reliable public health metric to decide when it is safe to open schools up again. The union on Friday said that teachers who have shown up already this week did run into some cleanliness issues, running from a lack of PPE to a lack of hand sanitizer and some other things that they've already seen in school buildings.
Now, we also had the chance to do a sit-down one-on-one interview with Janice Jackson last week. Let's hear what she says about reopening.
Let us not forget that individuals have been working in our buildings since the spring, principals, nutrition support staff, janitorial staff. So we have been implementing these protocols since the beginning of this pandemic. Obviously, that's going to be even more important that we do it well because children are going to be coming back into our buildings, and everybody shares in this, both the excitement, but also this concern that we have to do this right because the stakes are so high.
Matt, I apologize. We've got about 10 minutes, but what does the district say about discipline for teachers who don't report?
CPS has continuously said they're going to warn these teachers of their expectation that they do need to be there. The district has said that these people are going to who don't show up are going to face this progressive discipline. And on Friday, they said that those who don't show up beginning Monday are going to be deemed AWOL. It's absent without leave, and they're not going to be paid while they're out. That can be remedied, Jackson said, as soon as they come back to work. But for now, that's what they're looking at if they don't show up.
Okay, and I also want to mention that on Monday, Chicago City Council Education Committee is having a hearing about this very thing. Matt Masterson, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Brandis.
From the beginning of the pandemic shutdown last spring through the 4th of July, that's 105 days straight. Snow, rain, shine. Married musicians and educators Jean-Paul Coffey and Yakini Ajanaku Coffey made their front porch a stage for musical communion with their Kenwood neighbors. Tonight, they give us the last word on how they believe we all have something to contribute in difficult times.
My name is Jean-Paul Coffey.
And I'm Yakini Ajanaku Coffey.
We created this program called Music Magic Time, and we did Lake Park Fired Up, where we come out here in the neighborhood and provide some uplifting, energetic music for the neighborhood. And we know that music is a unifying force, and that really had brought all of us together here in the neighborhood.
What we learned is that, unlike most people, COVID separated them. One of our neighbors said it brought us together. This is such a great time to dig deep and give of yourself. And when we do that, the world just looks a better place. So we do this by music. Through music, we learn. Through music, we laugh. And through music, we love. So we're just honored to be the ambassadors, so to speak, of conscious music with a message to heal and to entertain, but mostly to love.
Life is still here, although this pandemic is trying to, cripple everything, but we're still here, so we still have to make it work. We're still doing this program online. We have our program Music Magic Time at musicmagictime.com, where the music is still going on for the children. We play music every day with the kids. They bring their instruments and we play and sing online. It's still a positive energy. In a world filled with anguish right now and anxiety, I think the best thing we can all do is to stay positive, be positive, and also give. whatever that you can give. In our case, we are musicians, so our gift to the neighborhood is music.
We ask everyone, what can you do? What can one do during this time? So when you look back, you say, oh, wow, we did something. Each person that you encounter, they matter. And they just might need you to just say, hey, a smile, how are you under that mask? You know, but that you see them and that they matter. Each individual that you touch, that you reach. So I want you to remember that. You're beautiful, you matter, and we need you.
You can read more about the Kofi's Summer of Music on our website. And while you're there, you can watch a few more from our Last Word series. And that's our show for this Sunday night. Be sure to check out our website for the very latest from WTTW News, including information on the state's COVID-19 vaccine rollout. And join Paris Schutz and me tomorrow at 7 on Chicago Tonight. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight Black Voices, I'm Brandis Friedman. Thank you for sharing part of your weekend with us. Stay healthy and safe, and have a good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm that's proud to serve its community through pro bono legal services.